In this section, we want to use the VFXs that were previously set up in the game. We open Player Blue in the prefab editor. Go to the prefabs and place this effect under the fire point. We place the next effect here as well and set the offset to 0. Select the Player Blue object, create a new script called VFX Manager, and then open it in Visual Studio. In this script, we first define a photon VO variable and assign it in the awake method. We don't need to work with these two methods, and instead, we define new fields named Explosion PS, Barrel Smoke PS, and Bullet Heat PS, all of type particle system. Next, we define a method called Play Explosion PS to play the Explosion PS particle system. Now we copy this method and paste it twice. For the second method, we rename it to Play Heat PS and define an argument called point. Next, we set the position of Bullet Heat PS to the collision point, which is this point. and play the effect. For this method, we name it Play Barrel Smoke PS and play the Barrel Smoke PS effect. Save the script and return to Unity. First, we select the smoke grenade effect and remove the auto distract script. Then we repeat the same for the rest of the effects. Next, we take all of these effects out of the prefab. We select the player blue object and assign this field. Go back to the scene and run the game. It seems we forgot to disable the play on awake property for the particles. Also, we haven't used any of these particles in the player controller. So we stop the game and open the player blue in the prefab editor. We select this effect and uncheck the play on awake box. Then we repeat the same for the rest of the effects. Next, we select player blue and go to the player controller. Here we define the VFX Manager accessor and in the take damage method, we call the play explosion PS method. And in this part, we call the play heat PS method from VFX Manager at the heat point of the tank. Here we call the play barrel smoke PS method in the fire method when the bullet is fired. Save the script, go to the prefab editor and assign the VFX Manager field. Go to the scene and run the game. We no longer have the previous exception issues in this run. Yes, it seems the VFX manager is working correctly, so we stop the game. Open Player Blue in the prefab editor, and then we increase the size of the explosion smoke big effect. And we do the same for the smoke grenade. I think a size of 3 would be more suitable for this effect. Now we go back to the scene and run the game once again. Stop the game and go back to Player Blue in the prefab editor. Then we replace the scale value for the explosion smoke big effect with 2. We go back to the scene and add Player Blue and Player Green to the hierarchy panel. Now we copy this object and set it as a child of the fire point of player green. For these two, we first copy them and then paste them as children in tank-free green. Next, we select player green, attach the VFX Manager script to it, and assign the related fields. We do the same for the VFX Manager field in the player controller. Now we add player red to the scene and do the same as we did for player green. So we copy this effect and paste it into the fire point of the player red. And then we do the same for the explosive smoke big and explosion small effects. Now we select player red, attach the VFX Manager, and assign the fields of the script. We also assign the VFX Manager field in the player controller. We can override all these prefabs and apply the changes. Next, we need to add these effects to enemy tank and enemy turret as well. So first we add enemy tank to the scene, and then we do the same as we did for the player object. Select the enemy tank object, click on Override, and then select Apply All. Next, we attach the VFX Manager to this object and assign the particle fields. We open the enemy unit tank script in Visual Studio. Here we define the VFX manager field, and through this variable we can access all the methods of the VFX manager class. So similar to the player, we call the play explosion PS method here, and in here we also call the play hit PS method with the hit point parameter as the input. In the fire method, we call the play barrel smoke PS method. We save the script, go back to Unity, and assign the VFX manager field. Select enemy tank again, click on override, and then select apply all. At the follow, we add the enemy turret prefab to the scene, and then we expand enemy tank and copy the smoke grenade effect. Select the projectile node object and paste the effect as a child of this object. We expand enemy tank again, and this time we copy the explosive smoke object and paste it into turret heavy machine 01. We do the same for the explosion small effect as well. Now we select enemy turret, attach the VFX manager script, and assign the corresponding fields of the script to the relevant objects. We open the unit turret script in Visual Studio, and similar to enemy tank, we define a new field called VFX Manager. Now in the fire method, we use VFX Manager to call the play barrel smoke PS method. And in the take damage method, for the case where health is less than 0, we call the play explosion PS method. And for the case where health is greater than or equal to 0, we call the play hit PS method. Save the script and then go to the player controller script and in the fire method, we copy this line of code and paste it at the beginning of the fire mobile method. This line of code was previously forgotten to be added to this method. We save the script, go back to Unity, and assign the VFX Manager for the enemy turrets. Then click on Override and select Apply All to register the changes for this object as well. We're done with these objects, so we remove them from the scene. Next, we go to Resources and reset the offsets that were created for the transform component in the players and enemies. Save the scene and test the game in single player mode. It seems everything is working correctly and there are no issues in single player mode. We stop the game, go back to the scene, open Visual Studio, and go to the VFX Manager script. We want to modify this script so that it can be used in multiplayer mode as well and is no longer limited to single player mode. All the VFX effects should be able to sync over the network. So similar to before, we use RPC calls and copy this method and paste it here. And we repeat the same for the other methods. We add the RPC prefix to the beginning of all these methods and use the Photon views RPC method to call them. Don't forget to add the pan RPC attribute to the RPC functions. We do the same for the other methods as mentioned. Save the script, go back to Unity, click on Build Profiles in the File menu, and then get a build of the game. In the output folder, we open two instances of the executable file and perform the final test. As you can see, all the VFX effects are syncing correctly over the network, and there are no issues up to this point.